Seattle Seahawks finally played their first preseason game, and the season is back and better than ever. It's almost here. But before we get into this, I will say, George, this is part 2 of our podcast today. We have, if you look on our feed, on our YouTube channel, if you're watching this, if you're listening on podcast, this is the part 2, the Seattle Seahawks version. There's also a Seattle Mariners part on the feeds wherever you are, YouTube or podcasting. Also, we added a clip from our main podcast, the Sports on Tap Brothers podcast, which we talk all sports and, all things sports. We had no context college football on, and he talked about the Washington Huskies at the end, talking about where he ranks them, and it's quite high on his list for this year. So all that's things to check out. You can see them all in our links in our description, and you can listen to the preview of that at the end of this podcast, at the end of the Seahawks version one. So, George.
What's up, man?
I got to let the people know. I'm Sammy on tap.
I'm George on tap, and welcome on into the best two brothers, not in just Seattle sports, but all sports. But Seattle, you get to find out more about us first.
Yeah, what a statement. All right.
I know.
More importantly, talking about the best team in football. Maybe not the best team, but we're working on it. We're on the right path. Seattle Seahawks had their first preseason game last night, and I'm not the biggest preseason guy. I know you're not either, but I will say the Seahawks over the last 2 years have one, they had a quarterback battle last year, which made it intriguing and a good rookie class. And then this year, again, another good rookie class, and some guys from last year's rookie class, like the Boye Mafes of the world, Kobe Bryant switching to safety, trying to see what some people on the offensive line look like. And on top of that, you had Jackson Smith and Jigba from this year's draft, Derek Hall, Mike Morris, Zach Charbonnet. The one thing about the Seahawks, despite being a good playoff team, that they had a lot of draft capital. And the one thing that's exciting about preseason when you're a young team, which, by the way, we're like the third youngest team in the NFL, I was seeing the other day, at least it gives preseason some juice, right? Like, let's see what some of these guys can do out there. So it's better than most seasons for me to watch a preseason game.
Yeah, but I like how you spun that there. I like last year, I could really tell you a reason to watch it because there's a quarterback battle. But I like how you spun it this year. You made preseason sound a lot more exciting for me than I previously would have thought. Like, I am excited to watch JSN, Mafe. Drew Lock played yesterday. I am just not a preseason guy. I can't get myself, like, I love reading the stories. I like to know who's the training camp battles, who's going to get that starting position. The Kobe Bryant news going to safety, I think, is very interesting because I don't really know, like, how much playing time is he going to get, right? Like, we do have abundance of safeties and corners. But overall, like, for me, preseason is just so hard because, for example, we saw JSN yesterday, right?
You're listening to the Sports on Tap Seattle podcast. Two brothers, George and Sammy, talk all things Seattle sports. Also, NBA. Please bring back our Supersonics.
And he was pretty dominant, but he was going against a lot of second stringers. I mean, he looked great. He looked like a beast in front of him, but we know he's not going to look like that against, NFL caliber corners. But he's still going to look good. I don't know. Preseason to me is just so hard for me to wrap my fingers around because I also know, like, if a quarterback goes off, he might be going off against second string corners and second string people going like pass rushers, for example. That's just my preseason take. For me, it's really hard to like get myself so immersed into preseason, but I do understand why a lot of people like it because you are going to find out who's going to be on the team. You are going to have some position battles for depth chart reasons. You're going to have a guy who wins a starting spot, but it's hard for me to really understand that watching the preseason game.
Yeah, I can see that. I just think you're looking at it the wrong perspective for this season. That's why I'm trying to help you with this season. At this point, there are certain times, like where your team just came off of you're like one of the oldest teams in football, and you came off a Super Bowl, and you don't fucking have any draft capital for like 2 years. Like, okay, there's not much to check out. We know what's going on. But when you're a team that's kind of rebuilding, it does become interesting. I think I told you this yesterday. It's like, without preseason, you might not have had a Russell Wilson starting right away in his career over what was his name? Matt Flynn. Yeah. You might not have had, Geno Smith, winning a battle against Drew Lock. You might not have certain running backs, make the team, like a third string guy that ends up actually producing a little bit for you throughout the season. Now, with all that said, that's why I said I'm not the biggest preseason guy. I'm not saying I sit there and I have to watch all 4 quarters and be locked in. But at some point, there are little parts of the game, like the beginning, I wanted to see, like we saw JSN make a couple plays early on. It's good to see because you're like, okay, well, against second stringers, he does seem a little bit above the competition, which is a very good sign. Because if you don't look above the competition, I don't know how you're going to translate to when you're playing against first strings. And there was a couple early, plays, like I saw a play of Derek Hall and Mike Morris, who, if you listen to Pete Carroll speak, if you listen to former players like Michael Bennett's been talking about these guys a lot on Seattle Sports Radio, they're guys that they actually think are going to make an impact for the team. It's good to see them make an early impact, even on a preseason game. In comparison to the 3 years we had of LJ Collier, remember, like every time, like, well, he's getting better, instead of like you weren't getting very many good words about him.
Right.
You weren't seeing any production even in the preseason. At least with some of these guys, you see some production, and then that like, there is something there. And that's what I like about preseason for a few minutes here and there. But I think we're on the same page that I'm not locking in for 3 hours.
No, I just can't do it. I'd love to lie to the whole audience here and say I watch preseason with complete and utter focus and happiness, but I just think honestly, one of the best things the NFL has done is reducing it to 3 games. To be honest, like at least we got rid of one of them. I think reducing it to 2 games would be even better, and maybe even 1 game. That they're not going to right now. There's some money involved. People do make the team, but overall, that's preseason for me in a nutshell. Like I'm gonna be excited to see who makes the team when the final depth chart comes out.
Yeah, like you said, in a nutshell, it's about to see who makes the team. And there's other people for that. There are people that are talent evaluators and scouts and all that. People like us, I like to consider ourselves advanced fans. We're a fan of the game, but we take it to a little bit of an extra level, which is talk about it for a living and make content for a living and deep dive into it. But at the end of the day, my goal is always to be a fan talking to a fan, right? Not me explaining to you why the break-off speed of Mike Morris's first preseason play was a quarter of an inch faster than the guy next to him. Not like an advanced metric scout. So
we're storyline. It's storyline guys, right? Like if you give me a good story out of a preseason about a guy who came out of Eastern Mississippi University undrafted and is about to make the team because he's had a great preseason. I love that story, right? But I can't tell you, like you said, the advanced analytics on why he might make the team.
Yes, but this is exactly why preseason will never be eliminated, right? So at the end of the day, I think there should be 2 or 1 maximum, and then that's where they should live with, because you see who's playing good. You also have training camp and practices, and a lot of these people have joint practices and scrimmage games. Mm-hmm. I think if you have a game or 2, you could probably get a sense of who should be on the team, who's fighting for a starting spot. I think that was proven by reducing it from 4 to 3 already. They said we don't really need that 4th one, and I think there's going to be a certain point in our lives when you continue to have coaches like Sean McVay and the new generation that are like, I'm not playing my star quarterback for 3 preseason games for a chance to get hurt before the season.
Exactly.
So at the end of the day, let's see what happens with the Seahawks team. I think we're pretty certain who a lot of the starters are, but I think the most exciting part, George, is some of the young players. I know Olusegun Oluwatumi's in a center battle with Evan Brown. Evan Brown, they said, was slightly winning it, but I saw something on PFF last night. He had like 18 snaps, 0 pressures allowed. Olusegun did. Mm-hmm. So small things like that, which is not small, it's a center position, but you know what I mean? Like small moments can change some guys' potential starting spots. Like I said, Mike Morris and Derek Hall, look like they had some actual presence yesterday. So things like that are good to see for a game or two, and then I'm just ready to roll those things into a regular season.
Absolutely, man.
I just want to see the Seahawks team, man. I can't wait for week 1.
I can't wait for football, but not preseason football. I'm being honest here on the podcast. I can't wait for regular season football. I'm probably not going to be tuning into every single preseason. By preseason game number 3, I mean, most of the teams know who the guys are.
Yeah, that's true.
Most, not all.
Yeah, man. It's tough, though.
It is.
It's tough to first of all, it's tough to not be watching football every Sunday right now, so I wanted to hurry up.
Yeah, it's that time of year. There's nothing really going on other than it's baseball games. And usually baseball games are done at 4 o'clock on Sunday for the Mariners. Sometimes if they're playing on the East Coast, 10 a.m. game done by 1 p.m. You got nothing going on the rest of the day. So can't wait for the NFL to start.
It's happening. But make sure you guys follow us everywhere on social media if you want to stay tuned with our podcast, Seattle Sports in general, main page at Seattle on Tap. And on Instagram and Twitter, we do have a page at Mariners on Tap if you want to stay tuned daily with Mariners stuff. At the end of this podcast, I will be playing a snippet here of our Sports on Tap Brothers podcast, our all sports podcast, talking to no context college football, talking about the Washington Huskies. So stay tuned for that right now. And other than that, George, do you have anything else about the Hawks?
That's it, man. Just go Hawks.
All right. Much love, and we'll be back soon. And you know what we like to say, G.
Hey, thank y'all for stopping by.
Peace.
Well, I'm going to just leave with one last question. I know we took you a little bit over your time, man, but we appreciate it. Since we got a large Seattle following, what do you think of Washington Huskies football this season? My expectations are very, very high, so I hope you can help me exceed or match them.
First off, I hate preseason polls. I hate preseason polls so much that I decided to do one this year. To show people how much I hate them. Because mine's just going to be so much different than anyone else's. Like, when you look at these preseason polls, people aren't projecting enough. They're more so brand names. Let's get Texas in there, Notre Dame. Like, let's make sure that the brands are there. And SC's at the top. And who was good in 2022? They have to be good in 2023 again. No, you have to project a lot. Washington lost 2 games last season, by the way, by what? I combined 6 or 8 points or something like that.
You should not have lost that Arizona State game.
No, they shouldn't have lost the UCLA game either. They should have gone undefeated. And if you want to talk about 2022, then seriously consider Washington. So I'm starting to write up my top 25, and I have Alabama at 1, I have Georgia at 2, I have Penn State at 3, I have Washington at 4. I think Washington
is
good. And when you're talking about, people will just blindly put USC there at number 4, 5, 6 or whatever, and not really think about it. The brand name wins over. Why though? Why are they better at Washington then? I would say both teams, yes, SC has the Heisman winning quarterback. They're the best quarterback in the country. If you really compare their 2 offenses, they're both just elite. And then if you compare the 2 defenses, Washington's defense is so much better than SC's. Yeah. SC can't tackle any of us. Let's be honest here. So if you're that high on SC, then why are you not that high on Washington? It just doesn't make any sense. And it's a very good offense with high-flying passing game with intelligent minds and DeBoer and Grubb and 2 of the best receivers in the country. I just don't see how you can't be infatuated with what Washington has. And the one worry I have is the Pac-12 cannibalizing itself in its final season, because that'd be fitting. It always cannibalizes itself. It always makes sure that the top team doesn't succeed as much as they should. So that's the only thing that scares me. But Washington, I think that they should be an 11-1 team, and they should make the Pac-12 championship, and they should beat whoever is there, whether it's Oregon State, USC, or Utah. They're the best team in the conference. I don't think I'm crazy for saying that, and I think you guys would agree.
Absolutely. Yeah, it just scares me as it cannibalizes itself. There will be a wacky game where Washington goes, I don't know, this year we don't got Arizona State, thank God. We haven't won there in, I think, a decade now. But there'll be a weird game where it's a 7:30 p.m. start on the West Coast. And
At Stanford.
At Stanford. Yeah, no, we won't lose to that Stanford team. But
I will say the Washington. My biggest concern this year is there's no cupcake game. Like there's usually a Sac State, something like that. This year it's Boise State, which is you can never say would be like an easy game. Tulsa, that's as close as like it, but like it's not as bad as like playing a Sac State or Portland State.
Like Tulsa, I think Tulsa's on the down end though. They have a really exciting quarterback in Braylon Braxton, but I just don't think that team is going to be very good at all. The Boise State game, like if you want to flip it to Boise State's non-conference schedule is awful too. They play Washington, obviously. They play UCF. They play at Memphis. Like they set themselves up for a really tough non-conference, and that could be one of the best Group 5 teams in the country. Boise State Washington's going to be a fascinating game, but yeah, like looking at Washington's schedule, there is no cupcake. You talk about the wacky game that could happen if it's Stanford. Oh my gosh, that's so embarrassing. I guess like the true wacky game though would be like you're in Tucson at Arizona, end of September. Let's say you just started your season 4-0. Things are looking up, and you've got Oregon in 2 weeks after that. Maybe you're looking ahead. College game day, maybe. Like
Penix kind of hurts his hamstring in the first quarter.
Oh no, Roland Dunze's just out for no reason. Nobody knows why. just coach's decision. Like that happens in college football all the time. Like we know that's going to happen to some team where their top player or like third best player is just not playing for a coach's decision. We know what it alludes to, but I don't know. For what it's worth, though, I just remembered it did pick Washington to make the playoff last season or 2 years ago, and it did not go well at all. So, hopefully, I'm not a jinx.
I really hope not, man. Speaking of that Arizona game, that's the game the first game I'll be at this year. So if there's gonna be a wacky one, it's gonna be the one that I go to.
Yeah. Hopefully they overcome it then, and they put on a good performance, and it'll be a fun game, shootout.
Oh man, I can't wait for it. This is the most excited I've been for Washington Husky football, and I would say since Peterson left, that would probably be it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb. I think that they have just two brilliant offensive minds there that are really good. Again, passing game, Fatanu on the offensive line. The defense has so many good pieces. Like they have 3 really good edge rushers. ETF, Braylon Trice should be a first-round pick. Zach Durfee, a transfer from Sioux Falls, where DeBoer was at too once upon a time. Like they've got some dudes, man. The secondary, we'll have to see. I would like Devon Banks to take a step up. And then the one position I am actually questioning is a running back. I would like to see them get a really, really good running back in the portal. Kean Mitchell went to the NFL, but if they could entice Kean Mitchell, you should transfer from ECU to Washington, let's make that happen. Or I would have tried to have been out there in the transfer portal and got a legit game-changing running back. So I wish that they did that. But it's okay that they didn't. They could win with throwing the ball. That's more fun anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let Penix throw it 50 times a game. It's more exciting.
Renaissance he had last year. Good for him. Hope it continues.
I know. That was awesome.
Yeah, it was great. That's been one of my favorite stories in college football last year.
I think I'd have to agree. I had a lot of doubts about him going into the year, and he shattered my doubts and everyone else's. And then, so I guess it was Washington 2 years ago. I said to the playoff. That was bad.
Yeah.
Oh, was that the Jimmy Lake year where they went 4 and something?
Yeah, the Jimmy Lake year.
It won't happen this time if I do end up picking them.
Yeah, they won't be that bad. Don't worry.
They have to be good.
I hope.
Hopefully.